Thank you for staying with us. President Bola Tinubu has nominated Jamila Bio Ibrahim and Ayodele Olawande to be confirmed by the Senate for the position of youth ministers. This development was made known by the Special Advisor to the President on Media and Publicity, Ajurin Galali. This comes weeks after Tinubu redeployed 60-year-old Abubakar Momoh, whom he earlier nominated as youth minister, to the Ministry of Niger Delta Affairs. Jamila Bio Ibrahim had served as the Senior Special Assistant to the Kwara State Governor on Sustainable Development Goals, while Ayodele Olawande is a community development expert and youth leader in the governing All Progressives Congress. Pending their confirmation, Jamila Ibrahim is to serve as the Minister of Youth, while Ayodele Olawande as the Minister of State for Youth. Well, joining us in the studio is strategy consultant, public affairs analyst, Dipo Oyewole. Dipo, good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining us. Well, and joining us via Zoom from Imo State is media manager, social commentator, Ify Onyegbule. Ify, it's good to have you join us this morning.
Thank you so much for having me. Good to be here.
Right, let me begin with you, Ify, because I know this will interest you. What came to mind when you saw Jamila Bio as being nominated as for the position of youth minister? If my memory serves me right, she seems to be the first female, young female to take up that position. I mean, we've been talking about gender balance, 35% affirmative action, and now we are seeing this. What were your thoughts?
When I saw that, Veronica, when I heard the news, guess what I did? I quickly went to check her out. Yeah, I needed to find out what it was about this woman. She looked so calm in the pictures that were shared. And I found out some of the things that she had reeled out about her. And it's just to say that she's not just starting. Yes, she may be the first in that office, a very young person as it were. But then she's got something. She's done stuff as it is. Moving through, when we talk about, being like in the corridors of power, she's done quite a bit of work. So it's a wonderful step in the right direction. When that happened, I said to myself, President Bola Tinubu is someone who looks out for the people who will be able to do the job, and he gets to fish them out wherever it is that these people are. So this is a wonderful step in the right direction. She's breaking the jinx as it is. This is the first time a woman steps in to that ministry. It's the first of its kind anyway, and I say that it's a plus. So the young people need to understand that sometimes you need to be prepared for when that opportunity comes, because it will always come. You don't always wait for people to hand you things. Look at the two people who have been mentioned with respect to this ministry. They have done things. No matter how anyone wants to look for it, they have prepared themselves for the chores that have been thrust on their shoulders, and I'm sure they're going to give it their best.
Yeah, let me bring it to the studio for your own first salvo, in this conversation. Two nominees, if confirmed, will be they'll be one of the youngest that we'll be having in President Tinubu's cabinet.
Yes.
And this is a clear departure from the old order, do you think?
Yes, it is. And I mean, we must commend the president for these two nominations. And this is why I said that. I mean, like you rightly said, the first person that was nominated for that position was a 60-year-old. And all of us said that's not going to happen. But somehow, if you've also been very observant, you'll notice that the president actually listens. Where they say they want to do certain things and then there's legitimate pushback, then they backtrack and see how they can put things in order. But that being said, I mean, like if you rightly said that these are people who have been prepared for that position, and it is quite refreshing to see young people take up positions of responsibility. I won't necessarily want to say positions of power, but for me, it is more positions of responsibility, because that is what it's really about. Because for their ministry, they do have a lot of work to do. Understanding the fact that they do represent a demographic of that forms the majority of our population. So it is a lot of responsibility on their shoulders, and we're looking to see how they will carry it out effectively.
Right, let me bring that back to Ify now, talking about the responsibility they have on their shoulders. Like Dipo has said, this demography make a chunk of the population of our society. And I'm wondering, how you will see these people, or what do you expect these two people to do, strategizing to ensure that they bridge the gap, especially between the government and the youth, because that has always been the challenge for most young people talking about governance gap. Do you think that they'll be able to do something, and what should that be?
I believe that these two persons will be able to do something. They'll be able to reach out to, when we talk about their peers now, we're looking at the youth. You there in the studio just talked about the chunk that this age group or persons represent as it is. Look at what happened, of course, before the elections, months before the elections. You could see that the youths of Nigeria are aware. Let me take you through what we talk about. You know, when you talk about this, you look at the baby boomer generation where I belong. Then looking at the Gen Zs. No, as it is now, we need to understand that the times are changing. And I'm glad that the president has seen a reason why he needs to bring in the youths into what it is that he's doing. Because I tell you, you can never do without these set of people. Things are happening, things that we never thought would happen. Look at what it is that when you talk about technology, that is going to play a key role. And where do you find the youths as it is? You find them with all sorts of gadgets. They're passing information. Everything is moving with the speed of light. So I'm thinking that these two people are going to be like a bridge between the young people and, of course, the government. It's a wonderful step. Dipo just talked about the fact that it didn't make any sense to have a 60-year-old, you know, manning that ministry. And as the president who listens, he said, look, let's do what it is that's right. Of course, maybe these two persons were recommended. They will look at them, check them out, and see what it is that they can do. And I'm just saying that this should be an example to the youths of Nigeria to say, you've got to make yourself available. It is a job. It's a responsibility, as Dipo has said. And I hope that they carry it as best as they can, because the world is watching. And people will ask the question, what is it that the youths have been able to contribute when we talk about their quota in governance in Nigeria? Remember, there was a leader who did say that Nigerian youth are ready for leadership. The time is now to move into everywhere. I'm telling you, everywhere will be occupied by young persons in Nigeria. That's where we're going. And I think that's the best thing that will happen to this great country of ours.
Right, I'm compelled to also come back to the studio to Dipo. You know, when you talk about the Nigerian youth, you want to, I think they took the center stage, especially during the NSAS period, and also this election that they just completed elections.
Yeah.
So we began to talk about the Nigerian youth more than we used to talking about them. How do you think the minister can, because they have a lot of needs to, so how do you think the minister can, you know, effectively engage with the youth to understand their needs and aspirations?
Well, first they have to understand that they occupy a very strategic position. And that being said, I mean, we talked about the demographic that they represent already. But how they can do that is, one, they have to show us what it means to collaborate. I will expand on that. And two, effective communication. Now, if you notice in the last couple of weeks that we've had the ministers sworn in, we've had certain ministries be very visible, and for good reason. Some ministries will necessarily not be that visible, but we've had certain ministries and certain ministers been very visible in carrying out their duties. This is one of the ministries that we need to be very visible. Going back to my first point with how they'll need to be great examples of how to collaborate. Now, for me, because of the group of people they represent, the young people, and the demographic, the population, I would expect that they collaborate with their co-ministers. For example, to come up with different programs that are relevant to the lives of the Nigerian youth. I'll give an example. Now, I would expect that one of the things they will do is to see how they can collaborate with the Ministry of Education and the Ministry of Labor.
Yeah.
This is why I say that. Now, unfortunately, the Ministry of Labor, up until now, and I hope that's changing, they believe that their primary responsibility is to see how they can negotiate with organized labor and unions, to see how they can either decide if the strike will happen or not and decide on minimum wage every 6 months. That's not the primary responsibility of the Labor Ministry. Now, the Labor Ministry is supposed to let us know what is going on in the world of work right now, what is the reality on ground. What do we have now? What will we have in 25 years to come? Now, that's where the Ministry of Education then comes into play to say, is our curriculum relevant for what you have put to us? So it is only the Ministry of Youth that can form that bridge between those two ministries, because either we like it or not, our curriculum is way outdated. And either you like it or not, if you want to know where a country is going, look at the educational curriculum, because ideally, your educational curriculum of your country should reflect where your country is going to. Unfortunately, what we have in our curriculum today in Nigeria is a curriculum of where we have been. And that will no longer suffice for us. Mm-hmm. So we need a curriculum that is relevant to represent what
the future.
That speaks to the future and is relevant for today first. And then we can say we are projecting 20 years forward, 25 years forward. So the Ministry of Youth should be able to form that bridge with how they collaborate with those ministries and other ministries as well. See how they can come up with various programs that affect the lives of the Nigerian youth. I don't know if it's the Ministry of Labor or the Ministry of Communication that said they want to create 10 million jobs. Now, 10 million jobs aren't just going to come out of the digital economy. That's not going to happen. So we need to see how the Ministry of the Youth Affairs can collaborate with said ministry that said they want to create 10 million jobs. Sit down, have a conversation. How do you intend to create these jobs? We have our ears to the ground. We have the ears of the people. We need to know how to get this done. Look for ways to strategically execute these goals and see how they can drive the agenda of the president.
Interesting. Ify, I've been hearing you sighing and, all of that, making some remarks. Perhaps you want to build on some of the things that Dipo has said. Yes.
Yeah, Dipo was talking about education. Wonderful. That's a great idea. But we need to also look at and remember the very restless Nigerian youth who are taking to entertainment, who are taking to fashion, and what have we. I think these two young persons who are occupying that position now should be able to look towards that category of young persons. There are countries where people organize events that are on a very large scale where people come from all over the world to attend. I think they need to also begin to think about gatherings where Nigerian youth will be fully represented. When you bring out your heart to attend, to contribute, so that you can also project Nigeria in a wonderful light. I am one who would say we don't have to push all our children. Not many of them want to sit down in school, sit down, get to learn. I'm not saying that it is wrong. It's a great one to collaborate with the Ministry of Education. As this said, the curriculum is something that needs to be tinkered with. In fact, torn apart so that we can put it all together again. We need to begin to understand that gone are those days where parents will say to you, this is what you're going to be. Today's generation, they are restless. So we must find a way to make sure that everyone, when I say everyone, I mean the different types of youths in Nigeria, the very good ones, as it were, that they are fully represented. Those that may want to get out of line as it is, as young persons, they need to also get to advise the president to say, this is how we can get to reach out to this. The gentleman with you right there in the studio talked about what he was during the NSAS. You could see how they collaborated. When you talk about collaboration, the young persons came together to say, this is what it is that we want. I think there should be a table now where they get to sit down and they have this person speaking on their behalf with some other persons and saying to government, look, this is what we want. How do you meet us at the center? So a lot of conversations need to go on. And government needs to also find a way to put out the right information. As it is, you and I know that what's happening on social media, you cannot control it, except you want to put a final lid on it. It is not possible. But then they need to make sure that the kind of information that they churn out, it gets to reach the people, reach them on time, so that decisions can be made on issues that have to do with the Nigerian youth.
All right, I'll stay with you, Ify. Because among some of the teeming youth that we talk about in Nigeria, some of them include the vulnerables, the marginalized, the persons living with disabilities. So I'm a bit iffy, sorry to clear your name, I'm a bit iffy about how the Minister of Youth can, bring all of them together. How do you think they can ensure that those marginalized and disadvantaged youth are included in the youth development scheme that might be brought about, that might be, brought by the minister?
Okay, so I would not say like for us to use the word marginalized, because if we say the truth, the government has actually done quite a lot when it talks about when you talk about persons with disabilities and maybe some people that you call the disgruntled youths. The idea now is to bring them together, sit at a table, as I said, and have that conversation. Let me take Lagos, for instance. They have something that they do with persons living with disability, and there is visibility for them. Back home here in Imo, my governor is actually doing a lot also when you talk about, disadvantaged persons, as we like to put it, or persons with disabilities. He's doing quite a lot. He's also one person who has seen reason to engage young persons. I'm glad that Nigerian leaders are beginning to understand that if you exclude the young persons, no matter where they belong, you're making a big mistake, because these are the people who will either make or mar you. So many of them are taking it to heart now to understand that, look, we need the young people. We need fresh ideas. We need people who are coming in with innovation, people who are coming to change the way things are happening. So to answer your question, these young persons who are occupying these positions, the gentleman and the lady, they will have to find a way to bring everyone to the table. There are associations. When you talk about disadvantaged persons, you're talking about people living with people with disabilities. There are organizations. They have their focal persons. They have their leaders. All you need to do is just find where they are, call a meeting, sit down, let people present what it is that their agitations, all that their requests are, then you find a way. But I also say that they need to look away from this idea of doing things in piecemeal. When you do things, do it collectively so that people are not left out, as the case may be.
Interesting. Let's bring the conversation back to the studio now. There's a question of if this appointment is serving as government actually intentionally looking to bridge the gap between they and the youth. Because experts have said that to have robust governance and accountability, you must involve the youth. But with this appointment, is that what you see?
Yes, it is. And I mean, like we said at the beginning of this session, that it shows that the government is listening from the first person that was nominated for the position. Yeah. But yes, in terms of being accountable and being deliberate with governance, I believe that these are clear indicators that this particular administration is quite serious about that fact. And I am quite optimistic. I know you're surprised I'm saying that about the government, that I'm quite optimistic. But yes, in this particular case, I'm quite optimistic that we will see progressive changes in governance and how the business of governance and government is being conducted, especially with these particular ministerial nominees and appointments that we have on ground. And I mean, for me, I would just want to see that they are very sound administrators, because either we like it or not, the job of a minister is mostly administrative, right?
Yes.
So aside from coming to the table with a lot of innovation and a lot of ideas, you must be able to work with the people on ground.
Right.
Yes. So, I mean, if you're not able to work with the directors and permanent secretaries you meet on ground, speak all the English, write all the
proposals. Who might be older than them?
Yes, you might be older than them, and they've been in the ministries before you were born. And I mean, you come with all your English, all your proposals, they say, okay, okay, no problem. They shove it aside and they make a nonsense of whatever you're trying to do. So yes, I would like to see them be great administrators, and as well as see how they can effectively communicate with their counterparts at the state levels. That's the commissioners. Yeah. Now, by now, I expect that every state should have their own commissioners in the respective ministries, especially at the federal level. So I would expect that they're also able to have conversations with their counterparts at the state levels as soon as possible, so that they can communicate their vision to them downward. Because either you like it or not, governance starts mostly at this level. Okay, you can't stay at the federal level and say that, okay, this is what we want to do, and then we want to have significant impact. Because most importantly, for whatever idea you're trying to execute, you need accurate data. In this case, you can't get it at the federal level. You can only get it at the state level. Now, those at the state level, the commissioners will say, okay, our counterparts at the local government levels, we pull data. This is what we need. This is what is on ground. This is our reality. and then see how they can work in tandem with the ministers at the federal level. So for me, yes, them being great administrators would be a very huge plus to them. And it will be important that they understand that fact and not just saying they're coming in as young people, you're teaming with ideas, you have proposals and all. You need to see how you can carry every single person along. It is very important.
Well, the youth of today, they believe that the old generation had really failed them a lot. And this was also confirmed by the former president of Nigeria, Goodluck Jonathan, who said that his generation has actually failed. And the youth, in realizing this and trying to take over the governance of this country or to participate in decision-making process in the country, they became so not just courageous, but then they became so brash, disrespectful, and you see the way they even tweet on X now and some other social media platforms. And as people from other countries are beginning to think whether this is the way an average Nigerian thinks. How do you think this current ministry, this minister and the team can work on social re-engineering, working on orientation of the youth, that if you want to engage publicly, this is how you should go about it, rather than being seen as someone who lacks, real culture?
Well, in their own case, I would say it will be by showing results. Because either we like it or not, and I'm not endorsing anything, most of the way people choose to communicate, sometimes it's communicating their frustrations. Now, if you remember during the ministerial screening exercise where they were screening the now Minister for Communication and Digital Economy, this particular conversation came up, and he gave context to the tweets that were brought up, that he was tweeting out of frustrations and all of that. Now, that being said, I mean, there are people that no matter what you do, right, it will never be good enough, and they are just downright nasty. But I believe that in Nigeria, we have a lot more reasonable people across different ages, across different strata, than we give ourselves credit for. So I believe that when we have actual results that show that, these people are working, and not just their own ministry, but other ministries, government as a whole is working, there are people who are looking to see that, okay, maybe we give them a chance, maybe we're reasonable about it. But in the case where there isn't effective communication, that's why I mentioned effective communication at the beginning, where that is lacking, I'm afraid that we will see an uptick of what we're complaining about right now, because then the conversation will be, you are young people, you are there, you're representing us, or supposed to be representing us, and you're not doing that. Then what's the problem? So we get to see a lot more vitriol and these nasty kinds of commentary. But irrespective, I think it is quite still inexcusable, and we must be able to set examples with how we communicate. This goes back to all of us now. It isn't just a matter of the people in government, even as private citizens as well. We must set examples as to how we get to communicate on these social media platforms. We must be respectful, we must be responsible, because in the end, nobody owes you a response, nobody owes you a comment or a like or anything like that. You're just there to engage. So we must have that at the back of our minds while we engage each other respectfully on that social media platform. Nobody loves Nigeria more than the other person. We all love Nigeria and we all want what's best for our country. So we must be responsible.
Okay, quickly, Ify, a similar question, because we've seen the level of agitation and response of the youth towards the government, especially on the matter of trust. That's one critical bridge that these people have to, build between the youth and government as it is. And I'm wondering if you see, how you see them doing that, especially mindset shift towards the government and all the plans and perhaps everything that government is trying to do to reflect that they have the youth at heart, because the president said that he hears them and he had made promises with regards to things he intends to do for the youth.
Okay, so I want to say that time is a healer. Time heals everything. Yes, a number of youths are the feeling hurt. There's a lack of trust in the land. Well, you will start from somewhere. The president has started somewhere with the appointment of these two young persons to man the ministry as it is. I loved what Dipo talked about, them working with people who may have been there, excuse me, even before they were born. So the idea now is that you're going to work without fear. You will work with respect as it is. So the youths will be watching them now to see how they get to communicate what it is that the messages are. I pray that we don't get mixed messages. Yes, you can have people who have decided to live very recalcitrant lives, but then I think the time will come, or it has come now, for the Nigerian youth to sit down to say, look, if we must get what it is that we want, it is a process. You don't just wake up one morning and they offer it to you on a platter. Nobody is going to give it to you. Whatever plate that you want it served in, no one is going to hand it to you. You must work for it. And working for it means you have to start now. These two persons are the example to say, look, it is possible. You can be in position of responsibility, as Dipo put it, because when you say position of power, it begins to get into heads. Position of responsibility. You're not going there to have a jamboree, to party from morning till night. There is work to be done. And I'm thinking that they too will sit down and say, look, how do we, make good this opportunity that we have to be the bridge between these thousands, or should I say millions of young Nigerians who are yearning for good governance? Ask me what it is that they want. They want the best things that government can actually offer. Okay. And I think this is a wonderful way to go.
All right. Ify Onyegbule, media manager, social commentator, thank you for your time, as well as strategy consultant, public affairs analyst, Dipo Oyewole. Thank you for your time as well.
Thank you for having me.
Right.